So lookup activity will help you to get similar to what select command does for you, right? In a SQL table. So in an employee database, similar to that, lookup activity will get you the data from the table or your database. Then if you want more details, let's see employees working in which domain, employees like in which department, what is the employee ID, what is the job ID for them. So if you want to get more and more details, you have to perform more and more different activities inside the data the activity canvas. So for that, you will use that get a metadata activity. So it will give you the minute details, what are the details present for that particular data. So in last class, we were to see what are the resource pipelines, activities, and data sets inside this data factory, and we'll see like how output is taken out from a tabular format and it is displayed with the help of lookup activity.
Okay.
Like if you just want to retrieve a basic data, then you're using lookup activity. If you want to get more and more so details regarding the files when it was stored, how to retrieve it. So those details will be integrated will be inside the metadata activity.
Okay.
So let's just quickly see. We have seen that data could be from multiple sources, that is structured, unstructured, semi-structured data. We've also seen how ADF works. How ADF works is like data from different storage, like semi-structured, unstructured data. It is connected inside data factory, and you are feeding that data. Then data is transformed, and that data is loaded inside the data factory canvas. So what we have seen in last class is that so we can perform multiple activities inside the data factory. That is reading data from the data source and performing several tasks on the data. So what are the tasks you are performing on the data? You are performing serialization, compression of the data, column mapping. So whatever data which you have got, right? So what we discussed in data fundamentals. When we were studying data fundamentals, we discussed that whatever data we get from multiple sources, that data needs to be refined, that data needs to be cleaned in order to use that data. So if we're having 100 terabytes of data, that is only 50 terabytes of data is useful. So what you have to do, you have to compress the data. Only the meaningful data, only the data which makes sense, that data will be kept and the rest of the data will be trimmed off. And how do you do this data cleaning? First, you have to arrange the data in a columnar format. Then you have to see, okay, in this view, these are some anomalies within this data. So these are the anomalies which needed to be rooted out. So to see, okay, these are the anomalies. For that, you have to do column mapping. So as to load the data and map the data, first you have to map the data. Then you can perform various activities on the data. And what we'll do, the third step is writing data to the destination data, also known as the sink. So these are the three activities or the three high-level steps which you can do. That is reading data from the data store, performing these tasks, that is serialization, compression, column mapping, and then writing the data to the data store, that is known as sink. So this process you can
No. Pawan, serialization is what step that step do?
Serialization means what happens, your data is stored, it is stacked in a particular way, right? The data, for example, the images are stacked in a particular way. If you want to deserialize the data, you have to take up the data from last to first to LIFO, or you can go first in, first out.
Like sorting, huh?
Yeah. So it is like the how data structures are stored, right? Similar to that, here we're dealing with data. So it defines how data will be stored. Whatever the first data is coming, that data will be stored earlier, like this.
Okay.
So you can see this is the summary timeline. I will be integrating within Whimsical only. So in Whimsical, I will be adding this image as well. So let's just quickly see what are the high level steps in the ADF factory. Let's see what are the high level steps. So these are the three basic steps which you need to do. So it doesn't matter what type of data you have to perform these steps. That is the first one. What was the first step? Do you remember? Like we discussed now, reading data from the source. So first you have to read the data from the source. Or the data store. So this is the first step which we'll do. Now let's see what are the second step, which is already divided into 3 subtasks. So these 3 steps are
Serialization.
serialization, compression, and column routing. So you will perform the following tasks. So you have to perform this following subtasks. What's the first subtask?
Serialization or deserialization.
What was the second task? Tell me.
Compression or decompression.
Second will be like either you could compress your data, or if you want to inflate your data, you can do that as well.
In this process, you have unwanted data as hard, compression, right? Compressed.
Yeah,
But
if
what about the
unwanted data is, yeah.
what about the decompressed data? We can roll back the data, na? Otherwise it is permanently
Yeah,
deleted.
since you
After.
you had what? You had 100 TB of data, and you
Uh-huh.
had, like whatever the meaningful data, that was only 50 terabytes. So it trimmed out that 50
Mm-hmm.
terabytes. But you can also do decompression. Now you later find out no, entire data. So we removed half of the data, but whatever data we removed, right? In that we had certain columns, we had certain data that was useful to us. So you are again going back to the square one, and what you are doing, you are again taking the data which you removed. Again, you are using some of the data from the data which you removed. That will be called what? Decompression. I hope you get it now, right?
Okay, got it.
If you want to see, I will just want to just I will share you this. You can also edit in this. And what's the last step? That was column mapping.
Yes.
So then we have to map their data so that it's easier for us to see what's happening with the data. And last step, since we are having some source and there would be some destination, right? You go from home, you go
Yes.
to office,
Sync.
right? Yeah, so
Yes.
you go through a process, you go from home, you take a bus, then you reach the office. So next step will be what? We will go to a destination. Destination. We'll load the data in the destination or sync. So these are some of the basic steps which you need to follow. These steps will only be, since these are like a thumb rule, these will only be followed all the time once you deal with data factory. So let's just quickly see what are the steps. It can be summarized as from source. Then there is a root that is there, and then there you are having integration time. That is 3 subtasks will be done on the data, that is serialization, compression. Then again through the express route, it will go to the sync. Then what you're doing, you're taking transformation and enrichment. So what you have data from multiple sources, you have only 50% of the data, and that is the meaningful data on which you're going to do your data training and you can do data training and data translation things. That is data, you have to gain insights from the data. So honestly, you're testing those things. This is continuous integration and continuous development. So your development
Okay.
environment is directly. So you saw it last class earlier we had discussed copy activity. Since in one of
Yes.
the activities we are doing copy activity is one of the pipelines. In the next step, since already we are doing the development, that is we are already moving the pipeline. In the next step, we can also test our data in the same canvas, because here if we go and we make a one canvas, you will be able to see that when we did copy activity, like you could see manually through your eyes pictorially, you can see these are the pipelines, these are the modules which were there. So there you can see, okay, data is going from here. We can also back promote your data. There is also something called back promotion, means you can again git pull, like you can pull your data back, right? So those are the
Okay.
CI/CD pipelines which are there here. Don't worry, we'll be seeing this. So in Azure Data Factory, after your data is refined, what you can do in whichever analytics engine. So we have earlier seen Azure Synapse Analytics. So that was one of the analytics engine we had. That is in Synapse Analytics. It's also similar to ADF, but here there you are having more features, right? You can connect to Synapse SQL database. Then you can have Power BI integrated to it. So it provides more holistic, unified view is there in that in analytics engine is much better as compared to any other analytics engine. So here we can have various business intelligence tools like Synapse Analytics, SQL databases, and Cosmos DB. So also like for monitoring what you help, like after we have successfully built the application, since you know, right, we have to also test if our pipeline is working or not. To ensure that our integration pipeline is working or not, we have this monitoring process. So we have to first further test the viability of our pipeline. So this allows us to like track the successes and failure rates. So if the already your the feature is in development and it is already deployed, but it's not working, there is a failure in between. One of the modules is not working. See if you have lights, right? You are having Diwali lights, and it's all in a series connection. So even if one of the connection fails, all of the lights won't glow, right? Similarly, the same thing is here. If one of those modules or the components that doesn't work, it will cost you great. And since you've already deployed the project, if you've already deployed the project, it's not feasible to again go back and change the settings, again do the refactoring, rewrite the code. That will result in greater losses. That's why we are having this continuous testing thing. That is continuous integration, development, and testing. That's why there was a need for DevOps tools. So in Azure Data Factory, what we have, it provides various pipeline monitoring support is there using Azure Monitor. I will show you. Let me just show you. We have this Azure Monitor. So there they will also give the status of your pipelines, how's the health of your pipelines. So you can create monitor workspaces. If you have any of the pipelines, you can like automatically get. Let's just create a Azure monitor workspace. Let's say since we're creating for a data factory one only, let us give it a name that is monitor data factory. So what for which resource group we are creating a monitor workspace? That resource group is data factory. So you can see multiple resource groups may be there and multiple resources are associated with it. You have to just validate. Okay, for this we are creating a data factory. So it has validated everything is okay. Now we can just click on create and create a monitor workspace. So let's see. Let's wait for 1 minute to finish. So deployment to finish. Yeah, now deployment is complete. You can go to resource. Yeah, now you are able to see this is the resource group for which you have created Azure Monitor. So it will continuously monitor the resources inside this resource group, whatever the database is, whatever the data factory is associated with this resource group, everything will be monitored with the help of this Azure Monitor. You can see your subscription tags and the data collection tool, data collection endpoint that will be mentioned here. This is the query endpoint. If you want to connect external data, so you can see, okay, it will be connected to this endpoint. So we have this Azure Monitor, PowerShell Monitor logs. So this monitor will also record logs. So end of the project, I will be showing you. So okay, some logs will be reported for your project. So those logs will be displayed here. And also they mentioned we have this monitored clusters, right? Azure monitored clusters are there in the pipeline. So let's see what are the components, broader components we have discussed. What are the components in data factory? Let's just quickly go through. So these are the components which are there inside the data factory. That is pipelines, activities, data sets are there, link services are there, data flows are there, integration runtimes are there. So what do we have in pipelines? Pipelines is like for you're creating a copy pipeline. So it's for the copy activity. You're copying from, let's say, Azure storage to the Azure SQL database. So that is for a particular work. So for a particular specific work, you are creating a local grouping pipeline. So it's created to perform a particular task because a copy pipeline will copy data from one of the Azure services to the another Azure services. Then you are having a lookup pipeline where you are retrieving the data from the already made table, right? From the already defined table, you are taking up the data and then you are loading inside your workspace. So that is a task you are performing. So for different tasks which are performed, we have a specific pipeline for that. So why we are using this pipelines is that so main advantage is that our like management becomes easy since you are able to view on the canvas in the data factory canvas itself. Okay, these are the things which are available. We can see it like visually. So that is able to like monitoring becomes easier. Then we have this activities. So in activities, what you're doing is single processing step in a pipeline. So in pipelines, since we have right multiple activities are there, lookup activity, get metadata activity, for each activity is there. So these are different types of activities which are like steps inside a pipeline. So inside a pipeline only we'll be performing these steps, right? So you are able to see, right? This is a lookup activity pipeline. So here it's a filter pipeline, filter activities there, sorry. Then we are having setting variable. This is a for each activity. So in multiple pipelines, here you can see, okay, this pipeline status is, you have also monitor the status. You remember, right, in copy activity when we did, we got us like this green tick, then only we could progress to the next pipeline because is everything data is stored, everything destination is there, your source is there, and your processing step is working fine, then only you can proceed to the next step in the pipeline. Got it? So similarly, here also we are having different flows for each activity is there. So this is the for each activity. Same things, these activities are very not nothing like but steps inside these pipelines. Then what are these data sets? Data sets, these are the structures within your data stores. So what we saw, what was the first activity inside this ADF? The first high level activity inside this ADF was reading the data from the data source or the data store. In data store, what you are having multiple data sets. So in this data store, you will be having what multiple data sets. So there are multiple data sets which may be there inside the data store. So these point to the reference, the data that you want to use in activities. So these data sources, they will actually have a like they will give you the reference where the data is stored, where the data is stored which you want to use in your activities. Then you are having various linked services for ADF. What are the linked services which may have? Synapse Analytics, SQL database, Cosmos DB. So these are the linked services which you can have. ADF can connect to also multiple external sources. because if you deploy an ADF, you will be getting one URI. So with the help of that URI, you can connect to multiple external sources and you can directly load your data. And then you are having this data flows. So in data flows, so what it does, it enables data engineers to provide transformation logic without needing to write a code. So, for example, you are having a UML diagram before starting a project, right? So, from the UML or activity or a use case diagram, what you are getting with the help of the data flow diagram, you are getting an overview. Okay, these things are happening first. Let's say you have a e-commerce website. You are having authentication. Then you are having like when you like book the order, then it will be added to your cart. Then from the cart you can do the checkout. So you can see, right, one flow is established. Okay, after authentication only you'll be allowed to add an item inside a cart. So in data flow, you can see what are the transformation things which are happening without writing the code, without making a scalable app. Where before that we are able to see, right, this will be the like data flow, data transformation pipeline will be like this. So these are the activities which will happen. First activity will be this authentication. Second will be adding card. The third activity will be checkout activity. So different that flows will be given to you, so you can understand the flow logic with the help of data flows. And also they can be run as activities and pipelines, and you can also like scale out to them with the help of Apache clusters. Those things we'll see when we are covering this Azure Databricks. What are integration runtimes in Azure Data Factory? We are having various compute infrastructure. So that compute infrastructure, what it uses, it has capabilities to use the data from SSIS, that is SQL Server Integration Studio. So in we are having this one SQL Server Integration Studio. So it contains many packages where actual SQL data, that is actual on-premises data, which is stored in SSIS on like data which is stored inside the cloud. So we'll be able to see what are the techniques, what are the activities which can perform on the data. That is, data movement can be done, activity dispatch could be done on an SSIS package. So this will be covered once we see what is SSIS window. So once we are familiar with data factory, then we next step will be going like covering this SSIS. In Azure Data Factory and integration runtime provides, so it basically provides a bridge. So as the name suggests, it's a integration runtime. Within this unified pane only one bridge will be there to connect your different linked services and activities. So here we have one term called ADF triggers. ADF triggers, then we are having pipelines, then we are connecting linked services. So what is this ADF trigger? So trigger, what it can do, it can schedule the data processing based on your needs. For example, you are sitting in a different time zone in India and your client is in a different time zone. Let's say the client is in European time zone, or the client is in Australian time zone. So, and you want to launch the product tomorrow. That is, in India, like you can see that you are in a different time zone. Maybe after like 7-8 years, like 7-8 hours, the time zone will change. So what you can do, you can set a trigger. So at that trigger or that at that event, your product will launch. So you can see like you can set those triggers on demand, and you can also schedule various data processing based on your needs. So when in like on demand you want it, on demand you want to schedule it after 8 hours, you can schedule it by setting up the trigger of event. Then you can associate various pipelines with a trigger. Okay, so if you have a trigger, you also have multiple pipelines, right? You have multiple pipelines, copy pipelines, you have display pipelines, you're having display the getting the data pipelines. So what you can do, you can for the multiple pipelines, you can have a single trigger. So you can also start it manually, or you can also do it like automatically. You can automatically set the time, or you can also manually start this trigger. You have to just connect to all the linked services such as on-premises apps and data, and Azure services by integration. So in integration runtime and the bridge will be established between what the activities and the linked services. So all those things will be a single unified pane. You can connect those linked services, and you can trigger all these linked services with the help of a trigger for a particular event. Then you can monitor all those pipelines running on Data Factory with the help of Azure Monitor. So this is the monitor which you have deployed here. This is the Azure Data Factory monitor, which will be working for a resource group. And our resource group name is Data Factory. So if I go in resource group here at bottom, you can see that whatever the resources associated with it. So this is Azure Monitor. This is one of the linked services associated. So how many linked services we can have? We can have multiple linked services. Azure SQL database, ADF. All these things will be defined in a particular resource group named Data Factory. If you want to delete, like someone had a question in last class, right? I may be incurring charges because I'm on a pay-as-you-go model. So don't have to go and delete manually. You don't have to like go and delete each of the services manually. Just go inside your resource group. When you go inside the resource group, just do the checkbox. Here, all the resources which are listed inside the resource group, they will be deleted within one click. No need to spend more time deleting each and every resource. In case you miss some of this resource, you may incur charges, right? There are multiple resources that may be there. And most of the times you can't view all the resources which are. So currently I'm having 3 of these resources. But if you forget to switch one of these resources, if you forget to switch your data storage account, you may incur the billing, right? That's why you can use this. It's recommended to have a Azure resource group. So let's see when to use this data factory. So in data factory, it's used for what when we have a scenario which requires data integration, coding resources, supporting multiple data stores, and serverless infrastructure. So it can be used depending on this scenario. So what will be the decision criteria? So what will be the decision criteria for you when you have to choose this data factory? So it can be like, why do you need like this data integration or so if you need a particular project, you need to do this integration of activities and link the services. Definitely, you will be going for data factory. So they will be giving up scenarios. For a particular scenario, you have to decide whether you have to go for data factory, you have to go for Azure Synapse Analytics, so based on what we'll decide, based on integration runtimes, based on what are the support infrastructure is there, which is provided by a data factory, and what are the support infrastructure. The support from multiple data sources is there, but that support may not be there in Azure Synapse Analytics. So you have to again go for Azure Data Factory because it provides support from multiple data sources. Let's just quickly create a data factory and see how we can how a pipeline is created, and we'll see the lookup in for each activity. You can also just follow along. We'll select the existing resource group. Let me just name it. Yeah, now this name is unique. You should also make sure that your name should be unique, right? So earlier my name was not unique, so it gave me okay, you have to change your name because it's not unique. Let's just go to Git configuration next. You have to ensure public endpoint is there. So like I've explained in multiple sessions earlier, why you need to have a public endpoint, why you need to have in which case you need to have a private endpoint. So if you have a data which is not sensitive, then the data should be accessible from all the places you want to work with. So you can go for public endpoint, or if you want to connect to this data stored in data factory, like it's a sensitive data, you need to access a private access key. You can go for private endpoint. Let's just quickly click on create. It will take at least 1 minute for the deployment. That's it. I hope you all are following along, right?
Yes, Pawan.
Let's just go to resource and launch this story. Go to author tab. So here you will go in author. So what we'll do, since we don't have any pipelines deployed here, we'll just create a new pipeline. And what is the first activity which should do? The first activity I mentioned right before the starting of the class. What was the first activity I mentioned? Since you let us assume you are having a employee database and you want to retrieve the data, what is there inside the employee database? So you want to see this employee ID for that particular employee ID, what is the employee name? So for that you have to perform lookup activity. We'll see lookup activity. We just drag and drop. Since we have to execute a SQL script for retrieving the data from this factory lookup activity, let's just click on. So here, what we have to do, we have already seen earlier. So these are the steps which need to be followed. What was the first step? Reading the data from the source or the data store. Multiple data sets may be there. So what we'll do, you will go to this. We'll go to this settings and we'll select a data set. So I like if we what we did in last time was we uploaded one data table by creating an Excel file. So you can also create a new data set. Let us create a new data set. It was better stored in blob.